Yeah, you probably have a slow Wi-Fi.
Welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. So just yesterday, I spent a day in Fort McMurray, and it is a fascinating city. I wanted to learn a little bit more about it. And so tonight, I want to introduce you to Kevin Weidlich. He is the president and CEO of Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo Economic Development and Tourism. And he's joined by Lisa Sweet, who is the Director of Business and Investment Attraction at the Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo Economic Development and Tourism Organization. We're talking today about this economy in both Fort McMurray as well as Wood Buffalo. Kevin and Lisa, welcome to the show. How are you both?
It's great to be here. Thanks. I'm doing fine.
So when I landed, it was
it's great to be here.
When I landed, it was -10 and snowing. What's the weather like today?
A little bit warmer and a little bit less snow. I was definitely shoveling the snow off the driveway this morning.
I was amazed.
You're getting our workout in.
I was amazed driving around of the size of the machinery north of Fort McMurray. I was told that each one of the tires is $100,000. Give me a sense, if you could, of the economic situation in Fort McMurray today.
Yes. So so to give you an idea and an understanding of the scale, Fort McMurray and the Wood Buffalo region, we call it Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo, is still Canada's economic engine. And when we consider that today we are exporting more oil today than we have ever in our history, so it gives you an idea of how things are going well here. To give you some quick numbers, the oil sands industry in the region alone spend $4 billion a year within the local region, just on maintenance, on turnarounds, upgrades, supply chain, all the work that goes with maintaining the oil sands operations.
I was told that, and please correct my numbers if they're wrong, but I was told that we produce as much oil as 1/3 of Saudi Arabia. Is that true?
Yeah, that's roughly about right. Yeah. So we're also home to Canada's third largest reserves. So this is not a small operation. If you follow the news today, just yesterday the fiscal update was published by the province, and notwithstanding the volatility of oil, provincial revenues have gone up 4 times what they had predicted at the beginning of the year, namely because of the advances in the price of oil.
What's your expectation? Do you have an expectation of what's going to happen to the price of oil longer term?
Yeah, of course, you can talk. It depends on who you talk to and which analysts and what they're looking at. I would go so far as to stick my neck out and say that, we have a value play with regards to oil sands operations.
So Kevin, what do you think about the medium-term, long-term prospects for the price of oil? What's your expectation?
I would say, I'm very optimistic, and many investment analysts are as well. I'm not an investment analyst by any stretch of the imagination, but I understand the basic fundamentals of supply and demand. And world demand for oil continues to increase, especially as developing nations continue to grow and their demand for the consumption of oil continues. And also the lack of investment in oil supply, not just within Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo, and within Canada, but worldwide. So there's a gap, and so long as that gap continues, the demand for oil will require oil pricing to increase because there is a shortage of supply. That's the case that we're existing through today, and I'm expecting that to be the case for quite some time.
Let's come back to that in greater detail in a couple of minutes, but maybe I could just jump off the top into 2 other issues that I think most Canadians are well aware of when they think about Fort McMurray. A flood, and as I was driving around, people were describing to me how high the flood went on bridges and houses and buildings, particularly in downtown Fort McMurray, and then fire, and all around the city I saw burnt trees. Tell me about how you've come back from these 2 disasters, and is this a city that is prone to disasters, or were these 2 freak disasters that hopefully won't reoccur?
Well, I'm not going to touch whether or not they would occur again. If it happens, someone will blame me. So, but as far as the fact that we've been through the ringer, it's I don't think it's any secret. In the last 5 years, we've gone through a flood. There was an oil price crash, if you remember, and where oil was trading at negative values, which certainly affected the local economy. And then, of course, our downtown core was flooded. So there's no question that we took it on the chin. As far as the positioning of Fort McMurray and for the future, well, we're well prepared, and we've learned a lot of really solid lessons. So, for example, the municipal council and the municipal administration not only made the commitment, but made the determination to increase flood mitigation and accelerate it, so that full flood mitigation in the downtown core would be complete, ideally by the end of next year, and at the 1 in 250 level, which has never actually happened. That level has never happened in Fort McMurray, and they're not about to let it affect the community. So that is well underway and with significant progress. So in terms of flooding, we're all confident that the city is preparing itself for any risk around that. Fires are a natural occurrence, and when fuel is removed as a result of a fire, future risks of fire, of course, become abated, and that's basically what we went through. It's a tough thing to go through. We certainly, and our hearts go out to our friends and compatriots and fellow Canadian citizens in the Lower Mainland of BC. They're going through a tough time right now too. Maybe I can hand it over to Lisa to share some storytelling. Lisa was here during the fire. I was only here during the flood.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Well, as Kevin mentioned, we are prepared. We're no stranger to how to prepare for and respond to an emergency situation in this community. And one of the things I will say is that given our industry partners, the Suncors, the Syncrudes, the Cenovus, all of our industry players in this region, they're really and truly corporate citizens. And going back to the fire in 2016, we had 88,000 people evacuate this city, and and then fight that fire and minimal, I guess, damage in comparison to what it could have been. And I don't know if that would have been possible without the safety mentality of our industry partners, and then also without the support. So they all came in, and you mentioned about their equipment and the large pieces of equipment. We were able to access their equipment. Everybody worked together in the community, and everybody got out safely that day. And so, given that situation, and then even given the flood situation, the community all came together, rallied together. We have been prepared, and we're mitigated for future risk. And I think, and we did the flood mitigation, or we dealt through the flood, went through the flood during COVID on top of it all. So we can respond to situations. We have people from all over the world live in Fort McMurray. I'm not sure if when you were driving around, you noticed the diversity in this community.
Incredibly diverse.
We have people from all over the world, and so very diverse. There's over 100 languages spoken in the schools here in the region. And so we have just people that have come with all kinds of different experiences, and just that willingness and ability to work together and come up with solutions. It's a very hardworking community that way. And the responsiveness and preparedness as we go through these challenges, we come out on top. I know that the fire, we've fully recovered now from the fire in terms of everything has been rebuilt. And as Kevin mentioned, not only did we accelerate and mitigate for the flood going forward, but we've exceeded what the recommendation or expectation is. So rather than mitigate for a 1 in 100 year, which is the requirement, our municipal council has said, nope, let's go with 1 in 200 year. And we're mitigated for that now. So going forward, we're over prepared.
Chatting tonight about Fort McMurray, who Kevin and Lisa believe is the economic engine of Canada. And after my trip there, I would tend to agree with them. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Kevin and Lisa in just a minute. Stay with us, everybody. Good evening and welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Sagan and 60. So I had a trip to Fort McMurray, and I thought it would be really interesting to a lot of our listeners to check in with Kevin Weidlich, who is the president and CEO of the Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo Economic Development and Tourism Organization, as well as Lisa Sweet, who is the director of business and investment attraction at the Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo Economic Development and Tourism Organization, to see, what's really going on. And maybe Kevin and Lisa, we can just start with a little bit of orientation. So a couple of things. So I was told that Fort McMurray has income that is twice the national average. I was told that just a couple kilometers north of town is the farthest north any highway goes in Canada. Give me a sense, if you could, of a couple of things like that to orient people toward where Fort McMurray is and how north it is and what kind of development takes place there.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Yeah, so a few neat little factoids about our community and the region. So we're located about 450 kilometers north of Edmonton. And in fact, we're at the very close end of the way with only one highway in and one highway out of our. That's the drawback, but the plus side is, because we're so far north, we have a lot of tremendous natural beauty. For those that are watching the podcast and those out on the radio, you're not enjoying this, but we have backgrounds. These are photographs of our region at night, and we enjoy the Northern Lights. The Northern Lights experience is quite a phenomenal thing for this region, and you can even see it in the middle of the city, even with all the lights and of the city drowning it out. So it's a wonderful place to live. I myself moved here 3 years ago, brought my family, and the school system is well invested in and enjoys the benefit not just of a very good public school system, but also the fact that the oil sands industry does invest in the community, in the school system, and access to recreation, all of that. So it makes for a very beneficial and good quality of life. The housing costs are significantly different than they were, say, 10 years ago, when housing prices were at a premium, and that was just a function of supply and demand at the time. But we've since been able to balance that out. We now have a stable housing market, and the housing prices are just roughly about the national average, maybe a little bit more. Maybe I'll hand it over to Lisa to share a few neat little tidbits about our
Yeah, actually, so Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo, we're actually one of the largest, I think we are the largest municipality in Canada. So we have Fort McMurray is just one community of 10, and so the of course, Kevin said, located in Northeast Alberta, we're 66,000 square kilometers, so bigger than the whole province. Our region is bigger than the whole province of Nova Scotia. So that's something. We have 6 First Nations located in our region, and we have 6 Métis groups located in our region as well. So we have a strong Indigenous population who are all, I'd like to say, we're we kind of, our Indigenous communities actually represent strong Indigenous business here in the region, and really showcase a center of excellence for Indigenous business in Canada, to be honest. We have very progressive and prosperous Indigenous communities. So that's something about our region. We also, again, very diverse community. One of the things you mentioned about our incomes, the important thing to note is our discretionary income is actually the highest in Canada. So we have, everybody works hard, and we get paid for that. But we also have like the high spending power. The average age is 34. People are spending money, but at the end of the day, it may cost a little bit more to live in the north. However, we still have the highest discretionary incomes in Canada. So this is a place where young families come to actually get ahead. Majority of our residents own their homes. It's young families, very different. I've been here now for going on 11 years. It's really changed over that time. I've seen the male to female ratio is pretty even. We have a high number of young families, and our highest growing demographic is between the age of 0 to 12. So we have a lot of people having lots of children coming, and so we have lots of schools. This is a place that is really built for families.
On that point, recently we had the Oil Sands Trade Show in September, and usually the parking lot would be full at the venue. And one of the regulars commented that he usually would expect to see great big trucks in the parking lot, and now he's seeing a lot more minivans.
I went for a trip up to the oil sands, and maybe we could chat about that a little bit. And you know, I'd love it if you could give me some factoids, but also some economic data, if you could. You mentioned $4 billion of economic spending on an annual basis with the turnarounds and other spending. These trucks I saw that were you know, transporting the oil sands down the side of a hill, I was told could carry 400 tons in one trip. That they went for a couple of $1 million. That one tire was $100,000. That I went by several different camps, and the camps where I was told 7,000 to 10,000 people per camp. The size of the developments was unbelievable. And I thought smog, and I was told it wasn't smog coming out of the factories. I'm not sure what you call them exactly, but I was told it was steam that was coming out of the top of the facilities. We're massive. You know, we're acres and acres of development. It was breathtaking. Only once in my life have I seen industrial activity of that stage. Not in Hamilton, in the harbor. The only other place I saw industrial activity of that was when I had a trip to Shanghai's harbor, which is this massive, huge development of cranes and stuff. Give me a sense of how you're impacted visually when you drive up to the oil sands.
Yeah, you know, it's probably one of just awe, in the sense that you know, we are located well and truly in the north. So to think of all the logistics that had to go into place to have that kind of development built in a relatively remote part of the world. Relatively inaccessible. So, but the scale is indeed tremendous. So you mentioned 7,000 workers in a single camp. Well, if we count up all the camps within the region, we're talking about 40,000 people living in camps and traveling back and forth from the region to wherever they live throughout Canada. Many live in all parts of Canada, in fact, and they're flying in every 8 days and flying out every 8 days. So that's a lot of economic activity that takes place. Much of that traffic is channeled through the airport. Some of them go directly to the more remote camps with their own aerodrome. And then there's the entire supplying needs, this whole supply chain, not just for the oil sands plants and operations, but indeed for the camps themselves. They're basically mini towns scattered throughout the region and require that entire logistical supply chain of support. So that's a tremendous amount of activity. We certainly, as a community, we certainly notice when major operations are taking place. That's when, especially when a turnaround or a major overhaul operations and maintenance program comes in, because we will see hotels fill up, a lot more traffic on the road, lots more people heading north of the region. Today, it's probably a little bit more balanced and easier to absorb than was the case, say, 10 years ago. Lisa lived through a lot of that very massive boom. Now it's a more measured growth, and also because we went through that pain 10 years ago, much of the activity to be able to absorb future growth has taken place. So new developments, both in terms of residential developments, commercial and industrial developments, now all exist. They're service ready. They're ready to absorb more activity. That wasn't the case 10 years ago, and that caused some spikes in cost of living, spikes in land prices, shortages of land. That's no longer the case. Now, for the first time ever, we actually have a surplus of land.
But then, you know, I guess I was expecting these big camps, and I saw them, and I was impressed by them. But then I was told that there's something like 300 buses that make the trip up the highway from Fort McMurray, and the parking lots around some of the facilities were jam-packed with vans and trucks and cars. And then I was taken for a trip through a subdivision, I think it was called Eagle Ridge. And the development, the homes were as nice as you'd find in any metropolitan area across, you know, Canada. And I was surprised by that. Beautiful homes, pools, backyards, big, huge decks, grocery stores, movie cinemas, etc. And I guess I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting everyone to be living in a camp, and it looked like a subdivision that I could see in Mississauga or Port Cook Whitlam. Is that a new phenomenon, or has that been around for a while? Lisa, maybe you can answer.
Well, I think the fact that people are opening their eyes to the fact that Fort McMurray is a lot more than what people would imagine, I think that's the case. So, some of these developments have been around for quite some time. I live in Thickwood, which has been around since the 1990s. And if you drove into Thickwood, you would think that you were in any suburb of Toronto, any suburb of any major city. So I would say Fort McMurray's image and reputation is taking a beating because of stereotypes. But we are a thriving, vibrant community, and I know Lisa is dying to jump in because she's got some awesome stories to tell.
Well, I'm just going to say thank you, Kevin, for noticing, because I do want to jump in on this one. Fort McMurray is positioned for growth now. Our industry, our community grew so fast. Between 2000 and 2010, we had like an increase in population of 101%. We didn't have enough land, we didn't have enough houses, we didn't have enough roads, retail. We've actually come so far, and we're at a position today where we are positioned for growth. We have new communities being developed. We're attracting new retail. There's still industrial development that is taking place. More sustainable, our investments into innovation and technology and green environmental technologies. We're at that position now. Looking forward, we're no longer having to play catch up and trying to build for our community. We don't need the camps now. They're more for developments that are further out, that it takes a long time to get to, or they're too remote to get to. We actually have a full community here now that can service all of those young families that are coming here. So we are positioned for growth that way. And you're exactly right. We could be anywhere in Canada, and the neighborhoods here, you wouldn't know what subdivision you're in. It could be comparable to any other major city within Canada.
But I guess the question, Lisa, is, and Kevin, is it going to continue? And as I was driving around, I did also see another subdivision that was, all the street lanterns were up and the roads were in, but no houses were being built. And I was told that no housing, no residential development is happening right now, that because of people's concern about how long high oil prices may continue, people are willing to rent or buy existing homes maybe, but not willing to, no contractors, no construction companies, no developers are willing to buy new homes. Is that true? Is that true?
Well, only to a certain degree. I would say, as with all things, when someone's going to make a major investment or a major commitment for investment, they need confidence. They need confidence in the future, and there's no question that the discussion around energy transition and greenhouse gas emissions and the need to get to a net zero carbon economy is certainly front of mind, both in terms of national policy, but also at a global scale. It's a call to action. And so the downside of that is the vilification of the oil sands industry as basically contributing to greenhouse gas emissions. So
vilification? That's a strong word. You think it's vilification? Really?
It's an accurate word. It's an absolutely accurate word. Yeah, because when we think about the oil sands industry, we forget about the realities that the oil sands actually do in terms of innovation and the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So certainly in the 1990s, greenhouse gas emissions were very, very high in intensity, and it certainly emitted high amounts of carbon dioxide. But we've cut that significantly since then. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I do know from a competitive basis, it now takes fewer greenhouse gas emissions or less energy to extract oil sands than it does, say, heavy oil from California or heavy crude from Venezuela. So that's at a comparable level. We compete, and that's all due to innovation. Then we add into the current technologies that are currently being used in terms of carbon capture, utilization, and storage, which is the capture of greenhouse gas emissions and putting them underground and removing them from the atmosphere, or the further investments in innovation that the oil sands continues to make to basically get to a net zero emissions, both for the extraction of oil, but also the ultimate use thereof in different ways. Fossil fuels could be converted into hydrogen, and the carbon dioxide that would be otherwise emitted can and will be captured underground storage. So that's the hydrogen roadmap the province has done. So vilifying the industry, and I say it with confidence because it has been vilified. We have had celebrities come to our region and criticize our major industry, the major wealth generator for our country, and cause many people to wonder whether or not it's an industry that should continue. The fact of the matter is the industry must continue because we need to create that wealth so that we can adjust to a net zero carbon economy. And the best way that we can do that is by actually having industry and corporate citizens within our country that are committed to doing that. Nowhere else on earth will an oil sands producer genuinely commit to getting to a net zero carbon neutrality.
Major wealth generator for the country, you say. Give me a sense. How would it compare to the auto industry, for an example?
So the GDP contribution, I want to say, is just over 2% of Canada's GDP. I don't track the auto industry, but it is certainly comparable in terms of jobs and job numbers. Jobs are the oil sands employs people from across the country and a number of spin-off industries. So, for example, the tires that you described, $100,000 per tire. Those tires are also produced in different places throughout, the components thereof are produced in different places throughout the country, and especially where the auto parts industry is in the heartland in Southern Ontario.
I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize is the economic impact. I think that there's substantial employment just in Fort McMurray and your vicinity, there's no question. But I was told that the 4-lane highway that goes down to Edmonton is just nonstop trucks with materials, both materials going down to Edmonton to get repaired. And I was told that that repair and maintenance business has not moved to Fort McMurray. It's still in Edmonton, and so therefore it's a big employment generator in Edmonton, which is the supplier of a lot of those repairs and maintenance. And then coming north is all the brand new materials, and those materials are manufactured across Canada, if not farther afield in Canada. And I was told that it's comparable in its impact to the impact from a GDP standpoint of the car industry. Again, I'm not sure, I'll have to check that 2% number that you mentioned, but that's what I was told yesterday. And that it actually produces more tax revenue because of all of the extra taxes that are on oil that aren't on cars. And so I don't think Canadians realize how much Fort McMurray and the oil sands contributes to Canada. Lisa?
I think you're dead right on that point. It is actually, I would say it's like a psychological obstacle for the growth of the region, and to get to that point of confidence that it's a worthwhile industry to continue. I also want to add, the innovators, the scientists, the engineers that are in the oil sands industry are some of the very best, and they also invest in research and development for new products and new technologies. So our region is devoted to the extraction of oil for ultimate sale to markets. The use of that oil is largely fossil fuels, which we all recognize that's not something that can or should continue in terms of the greenhouse gas that it emits. So the hydrogen roadmap is, of course, now the bitumen or the oil from the oil sands can be a feedstock for the production of hydrogen, and the emissions can be captured through underground storage and utilization. And then add into the mix further uses of bitumen are being explored and brought to scale, and capable of being brought to scale within the next 5 to 6 years. For example, carbon fiber. So the bitumen beyond combustion program that the Alberta Innovation System operates, which is the province's research and development system that's plugged into all the post-secondaries across the province, which is mostly funded by the wealth that's generated from the oil sands. Let's not kid ourselves. They are developing carbon fiber as a new product. So the heavier molecules that comes from bitumen could be converted into carbon fiber at lower cost than the current production methods, and can create new market share and new uses for the valuable resource that we can extract from our region. And that's just one example. There's carbon nanotubes, there's the petrochemicals industries, there's the pharmaceuticals industry, all of which oil is a feedstock.
We're chatting today with Kevin Wildlick and Lisa Sweet of the Fort McMurray Economic Development Organization. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Kevin and Lisa in just a minute. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Second and 60. We're chatting tonight with Kevin Wildlick. He is the president and CEO of the Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo Economic Development and Tourism Organization, and Lisa Sweet, who is the director of business and investment attraction at that organization. Lisa, you were going, oh, I want to tell you about some of the numbers. I want to tell you about the numbers. Tell us about the numbers.
Well, just to go back to that economic impact, I just first want to say that 97% of Canada's oil comes from oil sands, and the majority of that oil sands deposits are located right here in Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo. So that's a statistic that I don't think, or a number that I don't think is very widely known, but it just goes to show the importance of the contribution here. Yeah, and then you asked about jobs. So there's 217,000 jobs that are either directly or indirectly associated with the oil sands development. So for every one direct job from the oil sands creates 2.5 jobs throughout the rest of Canada. So that's just, you think about the impact. So for every one job for oil sands industry, it's 2.5 indirect jobs throughout the rest of Canada.
And total employment again, what was it?
It's in 2018, it was somewhere around 217,000 jobs that supported and created direct and indirect jobs across Canada. And then when you look at that economic contribution, the oil sands development is expected to contribute over $1 trillion to the Canadian economy over the next 10 years. So that's the significance of our economy. 17 billion over the next 10 years, just to estimate it about for provincial and federal taxes. So when you look at those numbers, and again, I don't know what the automotive industry, what those impact numbers are, but I would bet money that it's not as significant as what the oil sand industry is just in this region.
Okay, but Lisa, Kevin was just talking about vilification. COP26 was just occurring in Glasgow a couple of weeks ago. People have been talking about climate change like never before. Some people say that your premier in Alberta doesn't believe yet in climate change, and there's been some negative attitudes in Alberta and the Alberta population toward climate change impacts. But climate change is something that people worldwide are worried about. Some people think that it's the end of the oil sands, the end of the oil business, the end of Fort McMurray. When people come to town and make comments like that, Lisa, how do you respond to them?
Well, one of the things that it's really, first of all, I would like to say that the commitment that our oil sands partners here locally, the oil sands industry actually, they invest more than half of all other Canadian companies, more than half of all other Canadian companies in innovation and technology to support land, water, wildlife, and air. So when you look at that and all of the new technologies, and Kevin mentioned the commitment to actually get to net zero. The other thing I will say is that our Indigenous communities really keep our industry accountable. They are all involved in making sure that our industry is investing in greener technologies that protect the environment, that help our air quality, that giving back and investing in those technologies. And, our Canadian regulations, Kevin mentioned it before, we're so regulated. We do have that commitment. We are producing more oil than we ever have. The investments that are going, the capital investment now, they're into making things greener, reducing emissions. Suncor's cogen project, all of the tailings. And we actually, we use less water than we're regulated to. We, you know, if somebody really dug in, you would really find how, you know, in comparison to other industries, how, you know, mindful and accountable and committed our industry is to, you know, reducing emissions and, you know, being a sustainable industry.
Lisa, I drove by a hill that was dug up fairly dramatically, a whole escarpment of a hill that was dug up to dig up the oil. And probably understandably so. It was described that particularly on the hills, you can see sort of the sand is almost black, that it's almost black from the oil that's in the sand. And that sounded sort of like, you know, panning for gold, panning for oil. It sounded kind of exciting, but it was a blight on the hilltop. And then I drove by a few big tailings ponds that were massive in size. Do you think that the environmental, you know, the attitude toward the environment is where it needs to be in the oil and gas business, in the oil sands business today in Fort McMurray?
What I will say, when you drove up through to the oil sands, when you were here yesterday, on your way, you would have driven through a large portion of reclaimed land. You would never have known that that used to be an open pit mine. There are, the bison are going, the wildlife is back. You would never know. There's walking trails. You would never know that years ago, that used to be an open pit mine. Now, one of the things that people, I guess, fail to realize when there is a development and it takes so long to actually get you know, a proposed new oil sands development to the actual, could take 10, 15, 20 years sometimes to get an idea to an operation phase. So everything has to have a plan to be reclaimed. And so yesterday when you were driving through the beautiful forest, before you got to, you know, some of the newer, you know, industrial, the tailings ponds and things like that, you actually drove through an open pit mine years ago, and now it's all reclaimed. You would never know. It's a beautiful forest. The trees are back. The wildlife is back. What I think is happening is that there's not enough attention, and there's not enough people telling that story. You do. I'll just say we have lots of rivers. People don't think we have all the rivers. I paddleboard down the rivers all summer and kayak and things like that. You literally can see the bitumen coming out of it's seeping through the sand. And the industry is essentially cleaning that up, taking out that bitumen and putting it back.
You can actually see the bitumen seeping through the sand.
Yes.
Seriously. Really?
You can feel it. And that's just nature.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I went canoeing with my family, and we naively wore nice swimming suits, and it was all stained from the bitumen that it was in the sand from the river. This is naturally occurring. Like, so, you know, there are parts where you can actually go to the riverbank and see the oil that is seeping from the sand on the side of the riverbank. So, you know, this isn't something we didn't put it there. We're taking it out, and you know, so we need to remind ourselves of that as people. Also, you know, to go back to the tailings ponds, there's been incredible advancements with the reclamation of a tailings pond. So Lisa's you know, described the current state. Well, some 25 years ago, the estimate was that it would take more than 40 years to reclaim a tailings pond. Now it's done in 7. So from the start of the decision to start to reclaim the tailings pond, it takes 7 years to have it fully reclaimed and brought back to a natural state. So you know, that is a sign of commitment.
Kevin, you mentioned hydrogen earlier in our chat, and I heard hydrogen numerous times yesterday. Tell me, do you think this is a real possibility?
In fact, it's more than a possibility. It's already underway. So there's a number of investments that have been committed to and confirmed in Alberta's industrial heartland, which is the area right outside of Edmonton, where most of the upgrading and refineries exist. And so Alberta, the province, has established the hydrogen roadmap, taken a major role in the attraction of investment capital produce increased hydrogen. Already, Alberta is a major producer of hydrogen anyway, because hydrogen is has important uses in the extraction of oil as well. So that road that is already underway, and the carbon trunk line, which is the carbon capture, utilization, and storage system, is already in place. It's already being used, and they're already at a point where they're capturing carbon dioxide. So that converts that basically, if you're an expert in hydrogen, there's different colors, and that basically makes hydrogen that uses oil as a feedstock. It's called blue hydrogen, which the emissions that would otherwise take place are captured and utilized. Thus, you now have a hydrogen that can be that could be zero emissions. So that is already underway, and the investments in hydrogen technology, especially for hydrogen fuel cells and the transportation of hydrogen, and having a hydrogen fuel system for North America is very likely, and probably the next big investment play. And I'm pretty certain that the major strategic decision makers are already well along that path.
I think you're quite correct about hydrogen, and I've also done shows on both hydrogen and ammonia, which is sort of like hydrogen from a molecular standpoint. And one of the interesting things is, as you commented, some people have commented about blue hydrogen being a negative, but the reality is, you've got some carbon that you've got to deal with at source when you create that hydrogen or the ammonia. Once you start shipping it, there's no carbon in what you're shipping. There's no carbon in the ammonia or carbon in the hydrogen, and so therefore, if you have a spill, a leak, or something like that, you're not destroying a river, a farm, or whatever it is that people were concerned about previously. And when it gets to source, when it gets to the end destination, and you burn it to create electricity or whatever it is you're going to do with it, similarly, you're not releasing any carbon. So you still got a carbon issue at source in Fort McMurray, which is something you got to deal with via carbon capture, and you talked about that. But very importantly, it becomes a non-carbon fuel currency that you are then distributing wherever you're distributing it and using it at the end user. And I think that's a story that people don't realize and understand. And I've been surprised at how many people don't realize that in a typical petrochemical hydrocarbon that we ship around the world, we're shipping a whole bunch of carbon that's not really creating the energy. It's the hydrogen and the hydrocarbon that's creating the energy. And so therefore, if you can get the carbon out and leave it back behind, you're a lot better off. Is that true?
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. In fact, the discussion isn't around, it shouldn't be around the merits of petroleum. The discussion should be around what you do with the petroleum and how do you prevent the emissions of carbon into the atmosphere.
So let's finish off with a little bit of a personal story for the two of you, if I could. Fort McMurray was pretty cold, and it's pretty far north, and it's a brand new town, sort of. I was really quite impressed with a big Parks and Recreation Center I saw, and I was taking a tour of that one of your major employers, I think, was a sponsor of. But Lisa, you said you've been there for more than 15 years, and Kevin, you said you've been there only for 3 or so years. What's it like living? What's it like actually convincing a spouse and a family to move to the northernmost, municipality, major municipality outside of the Northwest Territories and Yukon, I guess, in Canada? Tell me about it.
I can start with this one. So if you didn't already know from my accent, I came from Newfoundland. For me personally, I love this community. We have, first of all, the weather is fabulous, even though despite, the -10 and the amount of snow we have, we dress up, you can go out, there's things to do outside, you can go skiing in the trails, there's beautiful trail system. The weather in the summer, it's absolutely beautiful. In Newfoundland, I'm sorry, but it's so windy and the snow is so hard to shovel, and it's just terrible. Also, the commute times to get anywhere in the city, it's 10 minutes. We have big city amenities with a small town feel. And I have two children that I'm raising here, and I wouldn't want to raise them in any other community. I think that the opportunity that they have here, from education to career opportunities, to just get to Canada's largest recreational facility. We have it right here in Fort McMurray. And it's because our industry partners are corporate citizens. Like, you'll see Suncor and Syncrude and Cenovus and, every name on that building. And our kids just have so much opportunity. There's any type of sport they want to play, any type of recreation they want to do, all types of education, the culture they get to learn. It's just there's so much opportunity here in Fort McMurray for my kids. For me, I get to do all kinds of cool things and meet so many neat people in this role. And we get to experience things, and our careers get, we go in dog years is what we say here, with the things that we actually get to work on. So absolutely, I feel like it's a no-brainer. If you come here, you'll stay.
Kevin, do you agree?
Yeah, when we came here, many people told me that they had come here originally for 5 years, and they're still around 30 years later. So there's no question that it's a place that really grabs you, and certainly grabbed us as well. So I made the decision to move here with my family. We made the decision to move here just about 3 years ago.
From where?
From the Edmonton region, so just a drive up, but it's still a bit of a hop and a bit of a leap. It was a relatively easy conversation with both my wife and my kids. My kids had anxiety about leaving the schools, but as soon as we got here, COVID notwithstanding, kind of put a damper on some things. But the schools really, first of all, they really became part of the school community very quickly, and they're embraced and welcomed very quickly. And the schools here are really outstanding. So my sons go to Westwood High School, and Westwood boasts some of the best artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics programs, and coding programs anywhere in Canada. In fact, the University of Waterloo gives presentations to our students on the programs in computing sciences that they offer. And some of this is after school. They have an afternoon machine learning program for grade 10 students. Like, for me, who's over 50, that's just like, wow, that's just mind-boggling. And but the amenities here are simply outstanding. But then you add in the diversity of the people. So Lisa mentioned there's more than 100 languages spoken in schools. It is genuinely, the region really is a place that's a magnet for people from all over the world. We have technicians and engineers from Nigeria, from Dubai, Saudi Arabia, India, Pakistan, all over the world, frankly. And they come here to advance their careers. Many of them are immigrants themselves or first generation, and they're setting roots in our community. It's a neat little tidbit that Fort McMurray boasts one of the biggest cricket leagues in Alberta.
Biggest cricket league.
One of, yeah.
Good. So bottom line, Kevin, if someone comes and says they want to invest in Fort McMurray in a business, what do you tell them? And Lisa, if someone comes and says they want to move to Fort McMurray, what do you tell them? Kevin, you first.
They've made a very good choice. The question is how much and how quickly do they want to get to work?
For me, when somebody wants to come and move to Fort McMurray, I want to, give them my East Coast charm and take them around and show them around the place and introduce them to, whatever they're into. So we're very welcoming, and we want to make sure that everybody has a good experience here. So no matter if they're moving here or having an investment here, we will do our very best to show them the true Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo.
If people want to check out your website, can you tell us what the website is?
Yep, it's choosewoodbuffalo.ca.
Well, I want to thank both Kevin Wildlick, who's CEO of Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo Economic Development Organization, as well as Lisa Sweet, the Director of Business Development. I got to tell you, everyone, that I had a very pleasurable day and a half in Fort McMurray. I was astounded by the economic development, particularly in the oil sands, obviously north of the city. As I mentioned earlier, I have had the privilege of touring, steel mills in Hamilton and the harbor in Shanghai. The size of the industry in the oil sands is only beaten by maybe the grandeur of the industry in the harbor of Shanghai, which is the largest harbor in the world. I was astounded at how big they are. And then I toured a camp. I'm not sure if Kevin, you or Lisa have had this opportunity, but I toured a big, I don't know what's called, restaurant mess hall or something like that. I was told, and I was shown some of the salad bars and the food, and they were told me that the food that one can get in these camp mess halls and the like were spectacular. I was toured through an executive camp as well as a regular camp, and they looked like pretty nice hotel rooms, and they were pretty spectacular. I went through a bus depot that can wash and clean and do maintenance on 100 buses at a time south of the city, and that take, I was told, several hundred buses of people up north to the oil sands every day. I went through this recreational center that you mentioned, Lisa. It was a pretty impressive recreational center that your industry partners have built. I walked a little bit around downtown. It was pretty cold, but I walked a little around downtown, and it was a nice downtown. Your city hall actually is a good looking building. I enjoyed some restaurant dinners. It was a nice town. The people were friendly. They were very diverse. I had different ethnic people driving me around, and I was impressed, and everyone seemed positive about the future. They were a little bit disappointed, frankly. I have to tell you, Lisa, that they were hoping that some of the industry partners would be investing more in the future. They were saying, I heard this several times, that a lot of the companies were taking all of the excess money they were making right now and paying down debt and increasing dividends to shareholders. And people were hopeful that they would take some more of that money and invest it in some of the hydrogen clean technologies that Kevin was talking about and invest more in the future. But people understood why they weren't making big $100 million, $1 billion investments in new CapEx at this time. But they were very hopeful and very proud. And I heard this 1/3 of Saudi Arabia probably half a dozen times from different people. So again, I got to check the number because I want to make sure that it's right. But to think, how much we've heard of Saudi Arabia over the years, and to just think that actually Fort McMurray and Wood Buffalo produce 1/3 of what Saudi Arabia produces every day is unbelievable. And when finally someone said, look, it's as important to the Canadian economy as the auto industry is, it puts it into perspective. Maybe not employing as many people directly, but from an economic impact, and particularly from a tax revenue standpoint, because there's so much taxes on oil. So I really enjoyed my trip. I guess my only regret is I didn't get the chance to meet the two of you in person, but it's a real pleasure to meet you virtually. And thank you so much for joining us today and telling us a little bit about the impact of Fort McMurray on Canada. Really appreciate it. Lisa Sweet, Kevin Wildlick, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Brian.
Thank you for having us.
Well, that's our show for tonight. Thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. on 960 AM. You can stream me online, even from Fort McMurray, at www.saga960am.ca. You can get all my podcasts and video casts after the fact on briancrombie.com. All the videos are on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And all the audio is on briancrombie.com, on Speakeasy, on Audible, on Apple, and anywhere you can get good podcasts. Thanks very much for joining us. Lisa Sweet, Kevin Wildlick. That's our show for tonight. Good night, everybody.